long before the Great Pyramid became a symbol printed on postcards and textbooks. It stood alone on the Giza plateau as an engineered statement of power, order, and permanence. For nearly 4,500 years, its immense limestone blocks have endured wind, sand, and the steady pressure of time. Travelers climbed it, scholars measured it, conquerors marveled at it. Yet for most of its existence, the ground beneath the pyramid remained untouched, unexamined, and largely ignored, assumed to be solid bedrock, silent and complete. That assumption did not come from certainty, but from caution. The Great Pyramid is not just an ancient structure. It is a fragile historical record. Digging beneath it carried risks no one was willing to take lightly. For centuries, explorers focused on what they could see: the exterior casing stones, the interior corridors, the king's chamber and the queen's chamber, each mapped and debated in careful detail. The pyramid's interior became one of the most scrutinized spaces in the ancient world. The ground below it, however, stayed out of reach. Yet questions lingered. The pyramid was not built in isolation. It rose from a carefully planned landscape of causeways, temples, quarries, and burial shafts. Nothing in ancient Egyptian state construction was accidental. If the surface of the plateau had been so deliberately shaped, could the subsurface truly be empty? Or had earlier features been incorporated into the design, concealed beneath layers of stone and time? As modern archaeology matured, so did its tools. Excavation no longer depended solely on picks and shovels. Technologies developed for geology and engineering began to migrate into historical research. Methods that allowed scientists to look below the surface without disturbing it. Ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity surveys, and microgravity measurements offered something unprecedented, a way to see underground spaces indirectly through data rather than destruction. When these techniques were applied around the Great Pyramid, the results were cautious but unsettling. Subtle anomalies appeared beneath the limestone plateau. Variations in density, unexpected voids, linear features that did not match natural rock formations. None of these findings proved the existence of hidden chambers on their own, but they suggested complexity where simplicity had long been assumed. Archaeologists proceeded carefully. Excavations near the pyramid's base revealed shafts, tunnels, and structural cuts carved deep into the bedrock, some predating the pyramid itself. These were not random holes. They aligned with known construction phases and ritual practices from Egypt's Fourth Dynasty. Each discovery raised new questions about how the pyramid's builders understood the ground beneath their feet and how they used it. The focus shifted from treasure hunting to context. Modern research was not asking what valuables might be hidden underground, but why the ancient engineers shaped the subsurface in the first place. Was it structural reinforcement, ritual symbolism, practical adaptation to uneven terrain, or remnants of earlier sacred spaces absorbed into a new royal vision? What emerged was a quieter but more profound realization. The Great Pyramid was not simply placed on the plateau, it was integrated into it. The stone beneath mattered as much as the stone above. Every cut into the bedrock reflected planning, labor, and intention, carried out by a civilization that understood its landscape with remarkable precision. Standing at Giza today, it is easy to look up at the pyramid and forget what lies below. But the story of this monument does not begin at ground level. It begins beneath it, where ancient decisions were carved into the earth itself, still waiting patiently to be fully understood. In the middle of the 3rd millennium BCE, the Giza Plateau did not resemble the silent archaeological park seen today. It was an active, carefully managed construction zone at the edge of the Nile Valley, shaped by royal authority and sustained by a complex administrative system. Seasonal floods had recently receded, leaving behind fertile land to the east and a rising limestone escarpment to the west. It was here, on this elevated ground between river and desert, that Egypt's Fourth Dynasty set out to build a structure unlike anything attempted before. The Great Pyramid was commissioned during the reign of King Khufu, a ruler whose power rested not only on divine kingship, but on the ability to command labor, materials, and expertise across a vast territory. Stone was quarried, transported, and dressed with precision. Workers' settlements were organized nearby, supplied with food, water, and medical care. Every element of the project reflected central planning. The pyramid was not an isolated act of ambition. It was the culmination of generations of architectural experimentation and administrative control. Before the first stone block was placed, the builders confronted a critical decision. Where, exactly, to anchor the monument? The Giza Plateau offered solid limestone bedrock, but it was not uniform. Natural fissures, variations in elevation, and earlier human activity marked the landscape. Surveyors leveled the site with extraordinary accuracy, removing high points and cutting into the bedrock where necessary. These preparatory actions left permanent marks beneath the pyramid, marks that would later become key evidence for archaeologists trying to understand how the structure truly began. Ancient Egyptian construction did not treat the ground as a passive foundation. The earth itself was shaped, modified, and incorporated into the design. Beneath the Great Pyramid, the bedrock was carved to accommodate corridors, chambers, and leveling platforms. Some features were planned from the start, while others were adjusted mid-construction as conditions demanded. These decisions were practical, but they also reflected cultural beliefs. Stability, order, and permanence were central to Egyptian ideology, and the pyramid's bond with the earth was part of that vision. Early explorers, working centuries later, rarely appreciated this deeper context. Their attention focused on the pyramid's interior passages and monumental scale. The bedrock beneath was largely dismissed as unremarkable. When tunnels were encountered, they were often attributed to looters or later intrusions, rather than original construction phases. Documentation was incomplete, and careful stratigraphic analysis was not yet standard practice. That perspective began to change in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as archaeology developed more rigorous methods. Excavations around the pyramid complex revealed rock-cut features that could not be explained as afterthoughts. Shafts aligned with known architectural axes. Subsurface cuts matched the orientation and planning logic of the pyramid itself. These were not accidental or secondary elements. They were part of a broader design embedded in the landscape. As research progressed, archaeologists realized that the Great Pyramid existed within a layered environment. Beneath its base lay traces of earlier activity, including quarrying operations and ritual spaces that predated Khufu's reign. Rather than clearing the plateau entirely, the builders adapted to what was already there. They reshaped the terrain, integrating older features into a new royal project. This approach reflected both efficiency and reverence for established sacred ground. Modern investigations deepened this understanding. Non-invasive survey techniques allowed researchers to examine subsurface features without damaging the monument. Variations in rock density suggested intentional cuts and filled areas beneath the pyramid's footprint. In some locations, the bedrock dropped away sharply, requiring compensatory construction to maintain stability. These findings demonstrated that the pyramid's apparent simplicity masked a complex interaction between architecture and geology. The opening scene of the Great Pyramid's story, then, is not one of towering stones rising into the sky. It is quieter and more deliberate. Surveyors measured the land. Workers carved channels into limestone. Engineers tested load-bearing capacity long before such concepts were formally defined. Each action took place at ground level or below it, shaping the unseen foundation upon which the visible monument would depend. Understanding this moment changes how the pyramid is perceived. It shifts attention from spectacle to process, from mystery to method. The builders were not guessing. They were responding to real conditions beneath their feet, guided by experience, tradition, and careful observation. The ground was not merely supporting the pyramid. It was part of the structure's logic. As the first courses of stone were laid, the subsurface work was sealed from view, preserved beneath thousands of tons of masonry. Those early decisions, carved into bedrock, would remain hidden for millennia. Today, they offer a rare opportunity to glimpse the beginning of one of history's most enduring monuments, not as a finished icon, but as a project rooted deeply and deliberately in the earth itself. By the time construction began on the Great Pyramid, Egypt had already undergone centuries of political consolidation and architectural experimentation. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt had created a centralized state capable of mobilizing labor on an unprecedented scale. Kings of the early dynastic and Third Dynasty periods had tested new building forms, gradually moving from mud brick mastabas to stone step pyramids. Each innovation refined techniques that would later be applied at Giza, including quarrying, transport, and the management of large workforces. Khufu inherited this legacy at a moment when royal authority was strong and relatively uncontested. His father, Sneferu, had overseen multiple large-scale pyramid projects, including those at Meidum and Dashur. These structures revealed both successes and failures. Collapses and design adjustments demonstrated the risks of building at such scale, while improvements in stone cutting and load distribution showed that those risks could be managed. The Great Pyramid emerged from this accumulated knowledge not as an experimental structure, but as a calculated one. The choice of Giza as a site for Khufu's pyramid was influenced by geography and symbolism. Located near the ancient capital of Memphis, the plateau offered proximity to administrative centers and access to labor and resources. The limestone bedrock was strong enough to support massive loads, and nearby quarries reduced the distance stone had to be moved. Just as important, the location aligned with established sacred landscapes associated with royal burial and the solar cult, reinforcing the king's divine role. Understanding what lies beneath the Great Pyramid requires acknowledging the layered history of the plateau itself. Before Khufu's reign, the area had already been used for quarrying and smaller burial installations. Cuttings in the bedrock reveal extraction marks that predate the pyramid, suggesting that the builders worked within an already altered environment. Rather than erasing these features, they incorporated them, adjusting the pyramid's foundation to accommodate existing voids and uneven surfaces. Ancient Egyptian building practices treated stone as both material and message. Carving into bedrock was not merely practical, it carried symbolic weight. The earth represented stability and permanence, qualities essential to royal mortuary architecture. Subsurface chambers and shafts connected the king's tomb to deeper, timeless realms, reinforcing beliefs about the afterlife and cosmic order. These ideas influenced how the pyramid's foundation was shaped and how underground spaces were arranged. Over time, the Great Pyramid became a focal point for exploration, interpretation, and debate. Classical authors described it with admiration, but offered little insight into its construction. Medieval visitors speculated about hidden chambers and buried knowledge, often projecting their own beliefs onto the monument. These accounts, while influential, were rarely based on systematic observation. They shaped popular imagination, but contributed little to factual understanding of the pyramid's subsurface features. Scientific inquiry began to replace speculation in the modern era. Early surveys documented shafts and rock-cut spaces near the pyramid's base, though their purpose remained unclear. Some were initially dismissed as later intrusions or looters' tunnels. Only with improved dating methods and contextual analysis did researchers recognize that many of these features belonged to the original construction phase or to closely related activities. The background of research itself is important. Archaeology is not static. Interpretations change as evidence accumulates. What once seemed insignificant, a cut in bedrock, a filled trench, later became crucial data points. By comparing tool marks, construction techniques, and spatial alignment, archaeologists reconstructed sequences of activity that revealed how the builders interacted with the subsurface environment. These findings reframed the question of what lies beneath the Great Pyramid. Instead of asking whether hidden chambers exist, scholars began asking how the builders managed geological constraints and integrated earlier features into their design. The answers pointed toward deliberate planning rather than secrecy. Subsurface modifications were practical responses to terrain, construction logistics, and symbolic requirements. Placed within this broader context, the Great Pyramid is best understood as the product of continuity rather than anomaly. It drew on established traditions, refined them, and applied them at a scale never before attempted. The ground beneath it reflects this process. Each carved surface and filled cavity tells a story of adaptation, problem solving, and inherited knowledge. This background does not diminish the monument's impact. On the contrary, it deepens it. The Great Pyramid stands not as an isolated miracle, but as the visible outcome of decisions made over generations, decisions that extended downward into the earth, shaping a foundation as intentional and meaningful as the stone rising above it. The Giza Plateau rose above the western edge of the Nile Valley as a natural boundary between cultivated land and desert. In the Fourth Dynasty, this landscape was neither empty nor hostile. It was a carefully chosen environment whose geological and climatic conditions made large-scale construction possible. The plateau consisted primarily of Eocene limestone, layered and relatively stable, offering both building material and a solid foundation. Variations in hardness and fissuring required careful assessment, but the overall geology favored monumental architecture. Climate played a decisive role in shaping both the land and the work conducted upon it. During Khufu's reign, Egypt experienced predictable seasonal patterns. Annual Nile floods replenished the soil and temporarily freed agricultural laborers for state projects. Construction schedules aligned with these rhythms, allowing the workforce to operate at peak capacity without disrupting food production. The dry climate preserved cut stone and reduced erosion, helping subsurface features remain intact long after they were sealed. Politically, Egypt was organized around centralized authority. The king's administration coordinated quarrying, transport, labor assignments, and provisioning. This bureaucratic structure extended to site management at Giza. Officials monitored stone extraction, oversaw leveling operations, and ensured that bedrock modifications were carried out according to plan. Written records from later periods suggest that such oversight was standard practice, even if specific Fourth Dynasty documents are limited. Socially, the construction environment reflected cooperation rather than coercion. Workers lived in nearby settlements with access to food, shelter, and medical care. Skilled laborers, engineers, and surveyors operated alongside seasonal workers. This social organization influenced how subsurface work was performed. Cutting into bedrock required expertise and coordination, particularly when aligning underground features with surface architecture. These tasks were planned and executed systematically, not improvised. The natural topography of the plateau shaped engineering decisions. In some areas, the bedrock sloped unevenly, forcing builders to carve down high points and fill lower sections to create a level base. This process left behind distinct subsurface signatures, trenches, platforms, and filled cavities that modern surveys can still detect. Rather than avoiding these challenges, the builders integrated them into the pyramid's foundation strategy. Water management was another environmental factor. Although the plateau itself was dry, proximity to the Nile made water transport possible during construction. Channels and basins near the pyramid complex suggest controlled water use for stone transport and workforce needs. Subsurface cuts were designed to avoid water accumulation, ensuring long-term stability. This awareness of drainage demonstrates a practical understanding of how environmental conditions could affect underground spaces. Historically, the setting of Giza also carried symbolic meaning. The west bank of the Nile was associated with death and rebirth, making it an appropriate location for royal tombs. The plateau's elevation allowed the pyramid to dominate the horizon, visible from the valley below. Subsurface elements reinforced this symbolism by anchoring the monument physically and conceptually to the land of the dead, while the upper structure reached toward the sky. Over time, natural processes altered the setting but did not erase it. Wind deposited layers of sand, and minor seismic activity affected surface features. Yet the bedrock beneath the pyramid remained largely stable. This durability was not accidental. It reflected careful selection of location and thoughtful modification of the ground to accommodate immense weight and long-term preservation. Modern archaeological work must contend with these same environmental conditions. Heat, erosion, and conservation concerns limit excavation. As a result, non-invasive techniques have become essential. By reading subtle changes in rock density and composition, researchers reconstruct the historical setting without disturbing it. These methods confirm that the subsurface environment was shaped intentionally in response to natural constraints. The environmental and historical setting of the Great Pyramid thus extends beyond climate and geology. It includes political organization, social structure, and cultural belief. All of these factors converged beneath the surface influencing how the ground was cut, filled, and stabilized. The pyramid did not simply occupy the plateau, it transformed it. Seen in this light, the landscape beneath the Great Pyramid becomes a record of interaction between humans and environment. It reflects adaptation rather than domination, precision rather than excess. The earth itself was treated as a partner in construction, shaped carefully to support a vision of permanence that continues to define the monument today. As the sun sets over the Giza Plateau, shadows stretch across the smooth limestone casing stones of the Great Pyramid, revealing angles and textures that have been unchanged for millennia. The eye naturally follows the monumental structure upward, but the true story does not reside solely in its towering silhouette. Beneath the surface, hidden in the bedrock, lie traces of labor, ingenuity, and planning that few ever witness. A network of cuts, chambers, and alignments shaped by hands long gone. These subterranean spaces are quiet witnesses to the precision and foresight of the Fourth Dynasty builders. A reminder that the foundation of any great achievement often lies out of sight. Walking along the plateau today, one might feel the weight of centuries pressing down from above. Yet beneath the feet is an equally enduring testament. Each carefully carved cavity and filled trench represents a decision, a choice about stability, symbolism, and continuity. They are deliberate, intentional, and deeply connected to the larger purpose of the monument. The Great Pyramid was not merely erected atop the earth, it was integrated into it, as if the ground itself were a participant in the creation of history. This subterranean narrative raises profound questions for modern observers. How much of human ingenuity is hidden beneath the surface of what we see? What stories lie buried in the spaces we take for granted, in the foundations of civilizations, structures, and even our own lives? For archaeologists, every anomaly detected beneath the plateau is a clue, a fragment of intent preserved across thousands of years, waiting to be understood. The contrast between what is visible and what remains concealed invites reflection. Visitors may marvel at the monument's sheer scale, but true comprehension emerges when one considers the unseen labor and decision-making embedded in the earth itself. The hidden landscape below the Great Pyramid is as much a part of its identity as the towering stone blocks above. It reminds us that history is not always on display. Often it is layered, subtle, and beneath our feet. As night falls and the desert winds carry grains of sand across the plateau, one is left with a silent image. The pyramid's shadow stretching across the bedrock, the ancient cuts and voids preserved beneath it, and the realization that some of the most compelling stories of human achievement exist quietly, hidden from view. They demand patience, curiosity, and careful observation to be discovered. And for every subterranean chamber mapped, for every anomaly recorded, new questions emerge. Questions about intent, technique, and the human capacity to leave a lasting mark on both the land and the imagination. Ultimately, the Great Pyramid challenges us to reconsider the relationship between what is seen and what is hidden, between monumentality and subtlety, between permanence above ground and the foundations that support it. Standing before it, one can appreciate not only the grandeur of human vision, but the depth of human understanding required to shape the very earth itself. The story beneath the pyramid remains unfinished. A reminder that history is a living dialogue between the visible and the invisible, and that beneath every extraordinary achievement, there is often a hidden world.